This video is going to demonstrate the diagnostics of a window motor. So before you ever start with diagnosing window motors that are power operated, you need to understand the circuit and how it's wired. You want to know how many fuses are related to it, how many relays are related to it. So let's study the wiring diagram and then we will progress to other things. So first off, the windows don't work unless you turn the ignition key into the run position. Okay, so that ignition key, once we turn to the run position, power then goes through the fuse here, which is the ignition 30 amp fuse, goes up through the ignition switch in the run position, and then it activates a relay. So the relay is then what connects the 30 amp window fuse to our Windows switches. Okay, so we need to understand, first off, there's two fuses, they're 30 amps, and they're underneath the hood. Secondly, we need to understand that the windows don't work unless you're in run. Thirdly, we need to understand that a relay is what connects the two circuits. So the ignition key is the control side of the relay, which powers up this coil, and then it goes to ground. And when it powers up this coil on the control side of the relay, the magnetic field then closes the switch to the load side of the relay. And so the load side of the relay now, the power now goes from the fuse box through the 30 amp window fuse down to our window switches. So then now we have another thing that we need to understand. There's two windows on the car. So there's going to be two window switches. So you have the right window, passenger side. Power comes in right here, and then it connects it to the motor and the door by hitting that switch. And you either connect the down or the up. And what it does, it reverses polarity or the direction of the current depending on how you move the switch. Likewise, on the left, you could push the button down. I believe it might be up. I don't know. We'll go out and demonstrate. But you can control down, you can control up by moving that switch. Okay, and then that sends the power down to the motor. And understand one thing, that the motor has to be a complete circuit. So there is a ground side to the motor, depending on what you choose to do with the up or down. So, it might send power through the brown wire back over and comes to ground through the dark blue wire, or it might go through the blue wire, come back through the motor, and the brown becomes ground. So, anyways, there is a set of switches. It's in the center console, and then we have the door panel that we will have to remove to get access to the window motor. So the things that are really accessible here without really pulling too much apart is the switches, the relay, and the fuses. Believe it or not, the ignition key is not that accessible because you have to pull apart the whole steering column to get at. So we forget that all data not only gives us our wiring diagrams, but it also tells us how to remove and install things, so including the door panels. And this is invaluable information. I mean, if you're going to do a door panel, try to find out the actual procedure to removing the door panel. So we got to remove this little triangular block in the corner of the window. And then it's telling us to remove this one screw for the door latch cover, okay? And then it's going to tell us that there's 4 other screws that we got to remove, and then the door panel comes off, and then we will have access to our window motor and the wiring in the door, okay? And then it's that simple, but some door panels are not simple. The screws and the clips are all hidden because they want it to look professional, and everything's hidden on a door. The manufacturer does that purposely. All right, we have our 2001 SC1 Saturn. We have our wiring schematic for our window motor, okay? The window motors work in this car. It's all about us teaching you how to diagnose when something is wrong. So we're going to just work from the top going down on the wiring schematic. We're going to test the fuses first. So it says that the fuse is underneath the hood at the fuse box. And it's titled ignition fuse and window fuse. There's two fuses. The window fuse goes straight to the relay. The ignition fuse goes to the ignition switch and then through the coil of the relay. Remember, this is what controls the relay and turns it on and off. So we had two fuses that are pretty large fuses, 30 amps. So let's go ahead and look on our thing right here. And I don't know if you could see, we have an ignition fuse, which is this one, and then we have a window fuse, which is this one. For our circuit today, we're going to use what we call a power probe. Okay, so a power probe, you hook it straight up to the battery. It has a huge pigtail. It has audible sound, so if I touch power, it tells me if I have power and gives me a voltmeter. It's 12.6, so I have a full battery. And then it'll tell me if I have ground with the sound. Plus, it gives us a symbol, ground, positive. Fuses are positive, so I expect to see power on both sides. Power, power. That fuse, the ignition fuse, is good. I went power, and I went power here. I have power on both sides. Now let's go to the fuse for the window. Power, power. I had both power and power on both sides of this fuse. If I had power on one side and then not on the other, then that would be a blown fuse. But power on power is good, and they're hot all the time. So now let's go see where the relay is at. And it says it's the fuse block behind the center of the dash. So I know where that's on this car. So let's go inside the car.
So here we are on the passenger side of the interior compartment, and there's an interior fuse panel right here. And one of these two relays controls that window motor. And I'm not really sure, but a really easy way to tell is to just power up the window, see if it's going up and down, and then pull the relay and see if it stops. So Mike, can you go ahead and give me some power on that window?
Turn the key up. Okay, I'm rolling it.
I pulled one of them out. Is it still stopped?
No,
okay.
wait, no. It's not working.
Stopped, so I pulled the correct one, and that's how I find out what relay it is.
Yep.
And so we've already shown you guys in a different video how to exactly test a relay, but just about every relay I've ever worked on has a wiring diagram on the side of it, which tells you which what terminals these are on here. Really easy to identify, and we showed you how to test it. A really easy way to determine if a relay is good or bad is to take it out and switch positions. So I know that the window circuit was working, and if I want to see if this relay is good also, I can just move it over and plug it into the window circuit, and then I can have Mr. Fleming test it. Okay. See if it works or not. So now it's working. Pretty simple. That tells me right away that this relay is good. Let's put it back where we got it from.
All right, so we have our ignition key on, which powers up our relay. Okay, so then we know based on the wiring schematic from the relay, it sends the power from the 30 amp window fuse to our switches. A good pocket screwdriver is what you need for something like this, and because a lot of times these are just held on by little clips. Okay, so it's pretty simple. You have the window switches right here. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over, and then we need to consult with a wiring schematic because I know we had a blue wire and I think we have a brown wire, but we want to know what wire works for the one switch right here, which is the driver's door. So we got to refer back to the schematic. So my ignition key is on, the relay is on. I should have power going to my purple wire going to my switch box right here. So let's see. Should have power with the key on. And I have 12.4 volts at the purple wire going into the back of my switches. All right, now here's my switches. I have power right here at the purple wire. I want to see if I have ground at my, so both right and left doors depend on this ground circuit going to the power window motor switch. So it's a black wire. So I'm going to go right here to the back, and I have ground. I have power at the purple, and I have ground at the black. So now what the switches do, the switches apply that power and ground to the either the driver's door, which is the dark blue and the brown, or the passenger door, which is it looks like the tan and the light blue. So we're working on the driver's door. All right, so the switches send ground to all the wires right now. So all 4 wires have ground, and they're getting in the ground from this black wire. So what happens is you go to 1, you hit the window switch. So let's find this is the switch for the driver's door. Okay, it works. All right, so now I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna go to the blue wire, and I'm gonna go up. And you see that it sends power from the purple wire to the blue wire when I hit up. The dark blue wire, the dark brown wire, when I'm going down, let's see, that gets power. So the dark blue wire going up gets power. Going down, the dark brown wire gets power. Let's see. Might have to go all the way down. There we go. Down is power to the dark brown. Up is power to the blue wire. So my switch is working great. So we tested the fuse, we tested the relay, we tested the switch. Now we're going to show you how you test the window motor inside. But first, Mr. Lear is going to pull the door panel off.
Rolling.
Before we get to the door panel, I want to recap. We checked power going to our switches on the purple wire. We checked ground on our black wire coming from the switches. We checked power going to the brown wire going down. And we checked power going to the dark blue wire going up. We had power here going up. We had power here going down. And they both have ground until you hit the switch. So we checked that circuit. Now we're going to check the window motor itself.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take this door panel off so we can access the window motor and test it directly at its connector. There's a lot of different tools that you might use to take door panels off. Sometimes it's just a Phillips head. I like to have a little pocket screwdriver if I have to pop off any little tabs, and then to get the major clips off that hold the panel to the door, I usually use one of these 2 tools. So let me get started taking out all the screws. So I know there's some kind of fastener underneath here, and I'm going to really carefully get the tip of my screwdriver under there and wiggle this off, and even use my fingers in there until I can pop this out. And it looks like I might need this tool right here. Get that under there. Again, you got to be real careful that you don't damage anything. And that pops the clip off without breaking it or damaging anything on the door. Okay, the next few fasteners, I think they're just Phillips head. We're going to take one off here on this little cover for the door handle. Again, you want to be really conscientious about trying not to scratch anything or damage anything. People get really annoyed, and all these parts are very expensive. And I really need a little bit larger screwdriver, I think, but I got it. And when I take these parts off, I lay them somewhere where I'm not going to lose them, usually on the driver's floor. And then we're going to just try to wiggle this out of here. Sometimes it requires that you sort of move it around a bit with your hand. Don't ever force anything, because it's all made of plastic and it can break. And so this is attached inside here to a rod, which we may or may not have to take off. I might be able to fish this through the hole. And a couple more screws here. We'll get those out. We want to pull out anything you see. This one out. There's one more screw on the back edge of the door, I believe. Yeah, I got that one. And I think on the back of the panel here, there's one more screw. Oh, it's actually a pin clip, so I'll start with my little screwdriver and see if I can just pull that up. It looks like it came right out. I think we have to take this part out too. And now we can go down to the bottom, I believe, and see if we can start.
There, you want to show them what a pin clip is?
Sure.
The two pieces?
Absolutely. I can find them. So what this does is this inserts first, and then this pin goes in, and as the pin goes in, it spreads out this insert right here and locks it inside the hole. So it's, you know, instead of using a screw on everything, these make for quick disassembly. It does take a little screwdriver to separate them though. Forgot about, there's a little plastic cover right here which needs to be pulled off also, and this is always just held on with a couple snaps. A lot of times I just use my fingers to get it off. If you can't, you can always use, you know, some kind of prying tool, maybe like this one. But again, you got to be real careful you don't break anything, because you have to pay for it if you break it. So I think we're
not the high school.
I think we're just about ready to try to pull this thing off. So I'm just going to use my hands again, and if I can just pop this off with my hands, I will. And if I can't, then I'm going to use the tool. And so I want to try and slide this over to where I feel the clip, and then I believe I can just pry it down and get this to pop off. There, just needed a little bit of a pull on there. Just probably another one. There we go. Maybe I didn't have to pull it as hard. I just have to wiggle it around a little. So this panel, there's a little hook on the bottom here, and I actually had to lift the panel up to unhook that. And probably on this side, you got to wiggle it up a little bit too. And there it goes. Now we almost got it off. And I might be able to fit this through here. Again, you gotta be careful you don't damage anybody's stuff. It doesn't look like that's gonna go through. So what I'm gonna have to do is actually remove this. I'm gonna hook the top edge back on, hold it for me, and I gotta take a little bit closer look about how this is fastened. So you see this little blue clip right here? If you just push that off, it unlatches, you swing it out of the way, and I should be able to get this rod right out of there. And then it looks like there's another one down below too. You see that one, white one right there? So sometimes mechanics just sort of work by feel. If you can't get your face in there, just figure out how it fits together. And I should be able to pop that out. Yeah, there we go. Now that I got both of those out, there's just a small electrical connection. I think it's the power lock switch. So Mr. Fleming helped me figure this one out because it was a tough one. You had to get the screwdriver all the way down into the end here and push down on this. It's just not for me, it's not a very good design, but we got it out. And now I'm going to set this off to the side. And now I can easily remove this panel from here. Again, you've got to lift it up out of the window sill area. And then we're going to set this down somewhere where it's not going to be damaged, like maybe up top here on this piece of cloth, so we don't scratch that up at all.
Rolling.
So we got the door panel off, and the window motor is actually right here. You can see the back of it. There's usually a pigtail coming out to connect the wires. They travel through this hose right here into the door. But this particular setup, there is no way to access the motor unless you remove it from the door, and we're not going to do that. So we're going to go back to where the switch is, and we're going to use our power probe to send some voltage to the motor, just to show you guys how you would test out a motor.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this switch panel back off, and then I'm gonna disconnect the wiring from the switch itself. So now I have my wiring here, and I know I have power and ground, but when I'm gonna use power and ground now, I'm not gonna use the car wiring. I'm gonna use this, and I'm gonna apply power with the tip, and then I'm gonna apply ground with my clip here, So this is ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back probe this connector right here. It's called back probing with a paper clip, and we want to go up right now. So I'm going to apply ground to the brown wire. So hook that up here. So that's hooked to the brown wire. And then I'm going to take my power probe. I'm going to go to the blue wire. And I see ground. So I'm seeing ground through this. So that tells me I can roll my window up. Here we go. Show the window motor.
So as he's applying the power to this, where the switch connects, he's actually operating the window, going up and down.
All right, so now to reverse it, we gotta switch the ground and the power. So I'm gonna take this paper clip, I'm gonna move it to the blue wire here. I'm gonna back probe the blue wire. There's a little piece of paper right there. Problem. So now that's hooked up to the blue wire. Power now is going to go to to the brown wire, and now I can roll that down. So you're using a technique which we call back probing. Okay, so you could use this to turn things on and off. So your back probe, you'd put this into the back of a wire, and then you can make that be ground using the clip, and then you would apply power to another one. So this is actually for the door locks. So let's give that a try. I'm just trying to teach you guys a little something extra. So I didn't really put a lot of thought into this. So I need to verify which is which. So that's power and that's ground. So then technically I don't need to back probe this with the paper clip, because when you see ground, that's most likely the wire going to the door lock, and you can see that. So you do not need to attach a ground wire because it's grounded automatically. And you can see how I'm using that power probe to activate that. So we were hoping to do the window motor right here, like I just did the door lock, but because we couldn't have access, we even took the speaker off. Because we didn't have access to a connector in the door panel, we decided to do it at the switch. Now we're going to just put the door panel back on, and in the shop, you guys could practice diagnosing a window motor. Pull a door panel off, diagnose the door lock. You know, we'd even be happy if you pulled off a speaker, because one is the first thing that you're going to probably do with the car. You're going to probably put a new stereo and speakers in. So if you want to change speakers on a car, go at it. We just want you going out in the shop, practicing electrical and practicing these skills.
Okay, so we just have to put the door panel back on. I'm just going to do it in the reverse procedure, the way I took it off. And the first thing I took off was, the last thing I took off was the panel, but I want to make sure that this wire comes through so I can connect it to my power door lock switch. So this just hooks on the top. And once you get it lined up, oh, and don't forget, there's like a hook clip on here that I have to actually lift this up, hook that in. Start again. It's almost actually.
Let me take a picture of the hook clip real quick. Pull it off. So there's a hook clip. Excellent.
Actually, there's a couple of them here.
There's one, two, there's four.
So it looks like
there's two over there too, Jordy.
It looks like those all have to go in at the same time.
Yeah.
I guess I was lucky I didn't break those when I was taking
This is
it
a
off.
panel that
So
you go up.
It's going to be up a little bit. I think I have all those clips lined up, and then you just, gently tap things into place and go ahead and check. Yeah, I got everything hooked on. The next thing we got to put back in is this switch. The one I had the trouble disconnecting before. Of course, reconnecting, it's simple. Just plug it till it snaps. Now these two little door handles, one is for the lock and the other one is the actual door handle. I just noticed something kind of funny putting it back on. The door handle, the part that actually unlatches the door, this is for the lock, but the part that unlatches the door is broken. Somebody broke it previously. And so one of the things you always want to note, oh, Mr. Fleming's showing you the one on the other side. You can see that one's intact. When you're working on somebody's car, well, first of all, this is probably broken because, we practice here. It's a high school auto shop and we get these cars used. But when you're working on someone's car out in the industry, if you come across something broken, you want to note it down on the receipt or at least bring it to your manager's attention, because you don't want to get blamed for that when the customer gets back in the car and they say, hey, what happened to my door handle? Somebody broke it. It happens sometimes, so be aware of that. So the next thing I got to do is hook these two levers back in. And again, it takes a little wiggling and jiggling to get this stuff back and lining it up too. But if I'm careful enough and I position this properly, and I should be able to get it right back into the hole. Yeah, this one's a little bit challenging. So I was able to get that rod in, but I have to swing this clip around, and that's what retains the rod in there. I got it on. That's what keeps it from falling out when, just like this blue one, when it's in operation. Now there's a top one I got to get too. And I can get that, it's much easier to get in there. And don't forget, you have to swing this blue clip around, and then it snaps over the rod like that, and that way it's retained in there. And now I just have to get these clips back in here and wiggle it back in carefully so I don't damage anything. Oh, yeah, there it goes. Those had some slots they had to go in. There we go. So guys, remember this little pop clip right here? So I've got it set up, go right into the hole. You push the body of it in first, and then you just push this center clip in, and that locks it in place. Don't forget there was a little plastic cover up top here, and this just snaps in once you get it lined up right. Just press that in there, and then I just have a couple more screws, 3 more screws, and this little plastic rivet which goes right in here, and then I can get the rest of these screws in. So there was one right here. You know, I looked too what the screws look like. So these happen all 3 be the same, so it really doesn't, they're all the same. It doesn't matter which hole that they go into, but make sure you got it lined up and get that baby screwed in all the way. And then the last 2 screws go right in by the grab handle down at the bottom here.
I like how you grab the tip of the screwdriver and the screw at the same time.
Yeah, I try to get it so I can line it up like that. And then I always start both of them before I tighten either one of them, because, you know, I'm having a little trouble actually lining this one up. So if I tighten that other one, I'll probably never get this lined up. There it goes. And now I can just snug them both down. Remember, you don't have to crank really hard on this. You're just tightening plastic down, so get it snug. And that should be good enough. And then you always want to test everything when you're done. Close the door, you know, pull it, close the door, make sure the locks work, make sure the handle releases. And once you're sure of all that, then you can consider yourself done.
The window regulator is connected to the window motor. As the window motor turns, it rotates a large pulley that pulls a cable guided by other pulleys. Window clips attach the window glass to the cable, and as the cable moves, the window is raised and lowered. Reversing the polarity on the window motor changes the direction that the motor turns. Typical failures of the window regulator include broken clips, pulleys, and cables. Broken clips cause the window to become wedged in an angled position inside the door. Broken pulleys cause the cable to become bound, and the window becomes stuck in place. Broken cables cause the window to drop down into the door. Another common failure of the power window motor is an overheated motor. Motors can overheat due to internal problems and will not have the power sufficient to raise or sometimes lower the window. As soon as the window motor cools down, the window will raise and lower again for a time until the motor overheats again. Sometimes a window may only travel a very short distance until the window motor overheats. In some vehicles, the motor and regulator can be replaced independently. However, in most cases, the motor and regulator are replaced only as a complete assembly.